Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I would really appreciate it and I promise to update daily. If you love this watch, you can see it and you can purchase it on our website, thewatchbox.com. Today we're discussing a rarity and a welcome break in the usual parade of Breitling vintage-inspired watches and pilot's watches, resolutely modern and distinctly designed for diving. This is the Breitling Avenger 2 Seawolf with Cobra yellow dial. It's a big watch. Think of it as a big pilot for below the surface. So rather than flying above the waves, this is for faring beneath them. A timepiece 45 millimeters in diameter, extraordinarily thick at 18.7 millimeters. This is not fitting underneath any cuff, and almost identical to the big pilot across the wrist. That watch is about 57 millimeters. This watch is 56 lug to lug. The lugs, however, are tightly downturned, so they will work with the shape of your wrist, and you can see they do grip your wrist and wrap around, but make no mistake, this is still a huge watch. The spacing between the lugs proportional to the size of the case, 22 millimeters, so that's well chosen. Let's talk a little bit about the way the watch interfaces with your wrist, because frankly I wanted to buckle this watch down so you'd have a good sense of how it fits on the wrist. The watch is massive and so is the strap. It's thick. It features a central spline to add a little bit of molded definition and break up the mass of material, but you can see just how robust it is in profile. This is not going to tear. On the underside, well, it's branded and it's equipped with a counterweighted Clevis style pin buckle that more than anything reminds me of the buckle you'll see on a Patek Philippe 5522 or 5524 Calatrava Pilot. So there's a little bit of aeronaut in this watch, and you can see that's compounded by the Breitling Winged Bee logo. You can't quite get away from the fact that Breitling is the aviation watch brand, but then again, this is the diver among Breitlings. Polished, all of high polish. This is something we associate with the Schneider family ownership at Breitling. The watch has got bigger and brighter over time, but frankly, this watch wears it well simply because it is so purposeful. There is satin finish on the hoods of the lugs, a contrast that I appreciate, and once again, if you just look at the shape of the case, although huge, it wraps around the wrist. My wrist was 16 centimeters in the wrist shot. I can recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 15 centimeters in circumference. It'll look huge, but it'll fit secure. Helium escape valve at 9 o'clock for those of you who are saturation divers using exotic gas mixtures that will release helium that might accumulate in the watch during a dive. You can see shear guards squared off at their outer profile, protecting the Breitling logo B crown. This is actually the Breitling grenade crown. As you can see, it has a grenade-like quadrille or quadrant crosshatch. It's quite easy to grip because of that knurling, but it's also very distinctive. Now, we're not going to pull the pin on the grenade just yet, but you can see this one is loaded for bear with a captive bezel fixed by an immense array of screws, 8 individual screws rather than the 3 or 4 typically used on captive bezel arrangements. The difference being a traditional bezel is snapped on. Think Rolex, think Tag, think Omega. You can accidentally snap them off too if you hit something hard. Here, this bezel is fixed until your watchmaker removes it with tools. There's also a set of rider tabs, and this is a Breitling signature that began with the chronomat in 1983. The 1983 chronomat, we're not talking about the 1940s calculator bezel version, but the modern chronomat with its rider tabs inspired this system that makes it easy to grip the bezel. It's unidirectional dive style, and if your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved, you'll have no trouble. Just grip it by the riders. There's a chimney inboard. You can see that polished chapter ring that doesn't turn inboard of the bezel. That separates the bezel from the crystal in case the bezel takes a hard shock. It doesn't translate that to the crystal. So a thoughtfully designed watch. These cases are tough as nails. We have to use an incompressible watch setting in our water testers when we bring these in, and watchmaking can't compress the case to decompress it. That's how a water tester normally works. It compresses and decompresses by the same amount if the watch is watertight. With these, it can't even compress them, so we need to use a special setting. It's built like a tank, but it's as water resistant as a submarine. Water resistant down to 3,000 meters. You'll reach crush depth before this one does. You can see the dial is bright, and more than anything else, it reminds me of the Mango Zenith divers, the rainbows of the 1990s. There were both El Primero chronograph and elite versions, and this watch reminds me of those. It's like an elite diver from the Rainbow series with the Mango dial that happened to pop a can or two of Popeye's spinach. And if that particular reference doesn't date me, I don't know what will. All applique Arabic numerals and indices. It's a premium dial, and you can see the polish is high, and there's split style numerals, a detail that I appreciate. Contrast is excellent in spite of the light base. You'll also note that there's a flange outboard for more easily reading the seconds, and thoughtfully, Breitling has loomed all 3 hands. I don't know why some dive watches don't loom the seconds. A few well-chosen shocks of red to pop against the dial base. Underneath the caseback, you have Breitling caliber B17. That sounds aviation themed, but it's a dive watch caliber. 2824 in chronometer spec, automatic winding, 40-hour power reserve, stop seconds, quick set date, COSC chronometer certification. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour and pivots on 25 joules. It's the highest grade of 2824 you can get. A tank-like movement for a tank-like watch, or perhaps I should say a submersible-like watch. See it and take the plunge on the watch box. Breitling Avenger Seawolf, plenty of loom. Listen and you can hear the bezel action. It's a sharp and satisfying detent.